You have an exhibition up right now at the Venezuelan Mission to the United Nations in New York City. The show features several of your large-scale murals, some stretching nearly 28 feet long, focusing on the horrors of war, specifically the Lebanese Civil War, the massacre of the Palestinian refugee camp of Sabra and Shatila in 1982. Will you just tell me a little bit about your process in creating the works, both emotionally and physically, and how you chose to represent the war in your painting?
The present exhibition at the Venezuelan Mission brings back a wide selection of paintings that were done in the 1970s and 80s, the period when the civil war in Lebanon was raging with a terrible fury, dividing the country and causing terrible destruction, devastations, and human suffering. I began the Lebanon series when the civil war broke out in Lebanon in 1975. About 2-3 years earlier, I was working on I did the Vietnam War series, a war that was raging for a long time and charging the atmosphere in New York, in the whole country, and the world with terrible anger and a state of constant anti-war demonstrations that were affecting life and work and everybody. When I started the Lebanon series, it was like shifting zones, shifting from one area to another, in this case from Vietnam, from my work on the Vietnam series into the work on the Lebanese Civil War. But the actual subject has changed names, locations. The depicted scenes reflected similarity in terms of the subject matter and technique, and the continuation and heightening of intensity in their expressions on human brutality and suffering. The show at the exhibition right now at the Venezuelan Mission brings back to New York some of the works that were done in New York and other places, including Atlanta, around from 75 on through the 80s. So you have a very wide selection of paintings, including the Lebanon painting and the Lebanon summer of 1982 and the women playing under flaming skies, etc. In terms of scale, all these work are among several of the large-scale canvases, and they all have pretty much the same type of composition in terms of filling the entire canvases with figures and covering the skies with dark, intense, reddish, bloody sort of background in which the sky is almost completely concealed by the cloud and by the chaos and by what is going on. With respect to figurative arrangements, the composition of the Lebanon paintings, the big ones seem to be divided in almost 3 sections, but the focus is at the very center, with the 2 leaping female figures reaching toward each other and toward a round-shaped green object that floats between them. They're not touching actually, but they are reaching toward it to protect it or to come together as a symbol of this tremendous desire for unity and the hope that the people held so strongly. The rendering and positioning of the leaping female figures set in balance the entire composition of the scene of destruction. Because, the painting facing it on the other side of the wall is the Lebanon summer of 1982, which based its subject on the terrible massacre that took place in the Palestinian camps of Sabra and Shatila. This was during 1982. At the same time, you had the invasion, the Israeli invasion into Lebanon. So here, the composition of this painting is a little bit, it's pretty much in the same vein as the others, but it's different from the Lebanon. The division here is not horizontal in part, but rather vertical between the upper and lower part. There is a line in the middle. If you look at it, you'll see moving armored vehicles and tanks symbolizing the coming of these armored vehicles. And the upper part having a very heavy symbolic content of various objects, circular swirls and movement forming a bloody red sky and ground for a semi-spherical formation in which figures of men, women, children, horses, and flying creatures appear completely defenseless, bleeding and struggling to face and fend off the incoming onslaught of the horrors that descended on them by the brutal, cold-blooded intruders. Here I only show in the paintings the depicted, the innocent people. You don't see these warriors. They are rather invisible, but they are very well known. This was a Palestinian camp for older people, women, children, and a shocking thing is that you're killing perhaps 2,000 or 3,000 people, including the animals, such as the horses that were there. So you see them represented on both sides with the roaring horses and the sense of helplessness. And it's a terrible subject to depict, but it's a reaction. It's a response from an artist. You know, the camp of Sabra and Shatila is only about 10, 15 minutes away from our house in Beirut. Later on, I went back and went to visit the place. It's simply horrifying. So if you have here a wide selection that bring, in general, the horrors of war, scenes revealing intense imagery of the reality of war in affecting our lives.